Professor Landsberg, because almost a month into the conflict between Israel and Hamas, the White House has proposed a humanitarian pause rather than a ceasefire between the warring parties. Following U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken's meeting on with Israeli leaders on Saturday, Palestinian rights activists claim that humanitarian pauses are insufficient. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has also ruled out the possibility of a temporary ceasefire in Gaza unless Hamas frees more than 240 hostages. We speak to Professor Chris Landsberg, the SARCHI Chair of African Diplomacy and Foreign Policy at the University of Johannesburg. Thank you very much, Prof, for your patience with us and for your time this morning. When we take a look at how the United Nations Security Council has voted in the past week at least, a vote was not supported to condemn Hamas for that attack that will now be, a month on Tuesday, the 7th of November, as they launched on 7th of October. And then a vote to support the humanitarian truce has been overwhelmingly supported in the United Nations. What does this tell you when you take a look also at the United States position?
I'm so glad you start there. So let me try and do justice to the question about what's going on in the annals of the United Nations, but then I really want to respond to the key point you made about the Americans now causing for quote-unquote humanitarian pauses all of a sudden. But I'm not surprised about what's going on in the UN. I do tell you what is a bit shall I say, novel about what's going in there. I think there's a sense in which the U.S. is becoming, not from its traditional allies, but I suspect as this war goes on, you're going to even see some traditional U.S. allies starting to speak out and distance themselves from some U.S. positions. But I am struck by a newfound boldness in the world on the part of southern countries, other countries, middle powers, and of course powers like Russia and China in particular, who has been declared an enemy, and then the U.S. retracts and so on, is how they're willing to stand up to America. I think it was almost a folly attempt on the part of America to write a pro-American, pro-Israel, and to use their parlance, a Israel has the right to defend itself resolution, and it was shot down. And I was just struck by how many members said, we want a more balanced and nuanced resolution in favor of a just war. So that's the UN part. Let me just briefly, because for me it's very significant. I think America got itself into a serious box here, political box with incalculable, unbelievable ramifications. As President Biden got on that plane to meet the Israeli president, and then hopefully also meet some Arab leaders who then snubbed him, right? I mean, that's significant. He declared unwaveringly, unstintingly, their defense for Israel and the right for Israel to defend itself. Now, if you want to be an honest broker and go and quell a peace, but you openly declare support for one side, I think you create problems. And I've been struck by how Antony Blinken is now back a third time, this time around emotionally shocked by the carnage and the sheer destruction that Israel is causing in Gaza and against Palestinian civilians and the population, that it even shook America. So it's caught in this thing of Israel's right to defend itself, and much of it is targeted against Iran, and the brutality that is seen to be playing out. Let me leave it there for a moment
Sure.
so that we can then have a discussion
Sure.
and a dialogue. And I hope we're going to talk about South Africa's position at some point.
We will, but I'd like for us to take a look at that mantra of Israel has a right to defend itself. What should we understand about that? And not only from the American side, but from Israel's side in terms of their response to that attack on the 7th of October?
Okay, so let me tell you what it's supposed to mean for every state in reality, and what it means for powerful states and states who see themselves as untouchable hegemons, who can lay down the rules for others, and who can interpret international law and rules the way they want to. But I think there's something that's giving here on that point, but I'll get to that point. So, what Hamas did on the 7th of October was brazen. It was unbelievable. And if I could say something to South Africa here, just as an idea, I have no right to advise anybody, at least our government, is I don't think we should waver. And there shouldn't be dithering, as there appear to have happened, at least against the newspaper reports, and condemn that act of the 7th of October as a brazen act, and even if you use it, an act of terror. And we should reach a point where we are able to use certain lexicons in our diplomacy. Okay. So every state has a right to defend itself against internal and external harm, and therefore react. But there are laws of war and humanitarian law and all of it. So Israel was caught so much by surprise. I think one of the reasons you see this ferocious act by the hawkish military man that just believes solving problems through warfare.
Prof, you wanted to touch on South Africa and its stance. I mean, if you take a look at the two votes in the United Nations, South Africa also voted against condemning Hamas, but they've voted in favor of the humanitarian pause, right, in Gaza. And so what is it that you wanted to highlight about the country's position? This, as we wrapped up AGOA yesterday, and the talks of renewal come 2025 are not clear, because you've got some sides saying it will be renewed, and you've got some sides saying, well, we're not quite sure because of South Africa's positions lately on the international stage.
No, I just want to tell you there's some other mics open, so there's some echoes and other voices that I hear as I speak. So just be aware of that technical point. But let me say about South Africa's position. I mean, I think it was unfortunate, and I hope the media has their story right this time, that first apparently there was denial by our foreign ministry that the minister did speak to the leader of Hamas, and then we later confirmed that there was a talk, and then we now are told that the talk centered essentially around humanitarian aid and humanitarian assistance. Okay, I don't think South Africa should be scared to come out clearly on what happened on the 7th of October. Now, I can tell you there was a build-up to that. It's not true that that act by Hamas on that kibbutz came out of the blue. I mean, I can tell you, for example, in the year prior to that event of the 7th of October, at least 147 Palestinians died themselves in occupied Gaza by the by the Israelis. But I think South Africa should not waver on a matter like that. And even if it does it for strategic reasons, but I also think it should do it because it believes in peaceful resolution of disputes, humanitarian assistance and the like. And that will strengthen its hand on making the case for humanitarian assistance. I want to make a prediction for you. The public opinion is going to sway against Israel, America, and Western powers in ways not seen. And there are two things that happened overnight that struck me. The Jordanian foreign minister yesterday used the words crimes, war crimes. Israel is committing war crimes. But what Turkey did was unbelievable. Turkey recalled its ambassador from Tel Aviv. Our minister said, we're going to end this observer status of Israel to the AU. Why don't we follow through with things like that? In short, what I'm saying to you, here is a golden attempt on a catastrophe that we can't imagine. Gaza is about to be wiped out. Gaza is about to cease to exist as a state. The Israelis are going to be there permanently. This is what's going on here.
Okay.
This is not even, the idea of a two-state solution is not even on the agenda. And non-alignment is an opportunity for South Africa to clarify its position on this terrible event that's playing itself out.
Yeah, Prof, in fact, on the following through with the African Union, it was South Africa's International Relations Minister, Dr. Naledi Pandor, who actually said that she led that call for the ambassador to be expelled at the African Union. She was speaking quite recently at one of the trade unions events, and she actually said that you need to pay attention. She finished that part of relaying the story saying you need to pay attention because the issue hasn't gone away at the African Union. Only 3 countries of the 54 actually supported South Africa in terms of the expulsion, but the rest didn't support South Africa in that call. She went as far as saying rather that Morocco and Israel are dangerous for Africa. So that's something I guess we do need to follow up on with the International Relations Minister of South Africa. But for now, thank you very much for your time. Professor Chris Landsberg is the SARCHI Chair of African Diplomacy and Foreign Policy at the University of Johannesburg.